All right, the Sports Animals coverage of Thunder Media Day rolls on. Gideon Hamilton, Matt Ravis, and the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, Mark Daigneault. So we do pre and post game for Thunder games, and we've had a format for as many years as we've been doing it. That the final segment of our post game show, we look ahead to who you're playing, kind of dissect the matchup a little bit. Last year we had to stop doing it because there were so many games where top guys were out who you were playing, whether they were injured coming into the game, whatever. And I know you can only play who is in front of you, and you're always going to learn something about each individual matchup. But I know from the first years of you being a head coach here, it means something to you to have those guys out there so that your guys can prepare and you can actually see how they respond to certain matchups. I wondered what last year was like for you, because it just seemed like that happened so frequently, and how you as a coach still are able to learn from certain situations.
Yeah, it happened frequently last year, for sure. It's something that we were used to because my first year or two was COVID.
Right.
And guys were, you'd wake up in the morning and somebody would be out with health and safety protocols. So it's something we get used to. We'd like to test ourselves against the best version of every team, because that's the most accurate barometer of where your team is on that particular night. And over the course of the season, you learn a lot by doing that. But you can learn from guys being out, especially if it's a guy with a reputation. You can learn about your team's ability to play up to a standard regardless of who's in front of them. You never want to have to rely on the opponent for external motivation. You want that motivation to come from inside the team. And we've learned those lessons positively and negatively over time. And so we try to maximize. You only get 82 of them.
Right.
And however they come, we try to maximize them regardless of things we can control or not control.
And there was a 2-game stretch. It was around game 10 last year, Knicks and Celtics. You run every play for a game and a half. I think New York, you scored 145 or something like that. And you're running after makes. I mean, every time down the floor. In Boston, the first half, you seemed like you did it then. Was that something that was just kind of an experiment? Was it based on matchups? Is that something that you like to see, something that is just not sustainable in the NBA? I wondered if you could kind of tell us about that, because it really did stand out to us when we were watching the team.
I think, tempo in the NBA, you can gain competitive advantages with tempo in both directions. You can speed games up and attack on makes and independent of the starting point of the possession, and gain advantages that way. You can also gain advantages by slowing things down and getting organized. We did that quite a bit, especially like on the road. If the other team's on a run, you can use play calling, and the team can use set running to basically calm everybody down and get a good shot. And so I think you need to have both. I think when you look at especially postseason games, which is what everybody's building towards.
Sure.
You need to be able to run and take advantage of numbers or create advantages that way. You also need to be able to execute and really settle down in the half court, and you got to be able to do both defensively as well.
I wanted to ask you about the FIBA World Cup. You had a number of players play there. So I just want to ask you, what kind of positives can they take back, and how do you integrate them back in? Because it's different style of basketball, FIBA versus the NBA.
Well, it's a great developmental context for them. And I think the thing that, we don't totally wrap our minds around is just the game pressure of those games when you're representing your country, and when your country's pulling for you as hard as those countries do. I think Latvia, is a great example of that, just how rabid their fan base is. And certainly Australia has an unbelievable relationship with their national team. Canada, those guys made history this past summer. And so it's a really unique context, and really, really passionate basketball. And that game pressure really sharpens your blade as a competitor. I think it was a great experience for everybody that played. And with it happening so late in the summer, I think them playing game minutes, real game minutes, not just like pickup in the off season, but real game minutes under pressure, is good for them. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what they look like coming out of it.
And then I want to ask you about Chet. Just from the outside looking in, it would be really hard to stay patient. Obviously he wants to play. He loves playing basketball. How do you measure him? Because I'm sure he's wanting to run through that wall while, just trying to make sure that he's ready and fresh for the season.
Well, I mean, our medical and performance staff do a great job with every player of making sure that, we're keeping guys healthy, but also keeping them sharp and fresh competitively. And he's no exception to that. And then, all I'd say is it's day zero, for our team, and it's day zero for him in the NBA. He hasn't been under game pressure since the NCAA tournament. If you kick out summer league, he hasn't been under game pressure in a year and a half. And so there's return to play, and then there's return to performance. And, when you haven't played in a game like that for that long, you can't necessarily expect the highest level of performance the first game that he's back. And you add on top of that the fact that it'll be his first NBA game, the first game that he's back. And it's more of a baseline and more of a starting point than it is anything else. So we're only going to evaluate it as such, nothing more, and then start the developmental process with him just like the rest of our team.
You brought up summer league. How much weight do you place on what happens in that environment?
It's a great developmental touch point, so, for any of our players, like Case and Wallace, Keontae, it's the first time you see them playing basketball in a pro environment. So it's a great baseline for them. And then for guys that developmentally, Jang, Trey Mann, those types of players that, have experience under their belt, but had put in 6 to 8 weeks of a great summer at the end of the season, you get to check back in with them and see what they look like. But it's nothing more than that either. But certainly we take it seriously.
Last one, guys who play heavy minutes, maybe into an overtime game. Do you kind of still have that feeling of, hey, I've been there because I've been the third hour of a Springsteen concert? That's kind of what it feels like.
I've actually been to the fourth hour of a Springsteen
Are you
concert.
kidding?
Yeah, I saw him at MetLife in 2013 or 14, and he played 4 hours in like 2 minutes or something. So I mean, it's just
Amazing.
unbelievable endurance, and removes any excuse. I mean, unless you go to like, I don't know what that would be like 10 overtimes. You can't replicate it. Of course, these guys are giving a pretty good output. He's playing like 10th Avenue freeze out. So, it's not quite the same, but certainly inspirational nonetheless.
Coach,
I love coming on here because it's always a Springsteen reference. I'll continue to come back to the sports animal as long as I can talk about Springsteen.
You bet.
All
Anytime.
right.
Thanks, Coach. Coach. Thanks.